Good afternoon, Illana. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I was reminiscing back to when I first became aware of you, and that was at the Girls into VC
Yes.
first, hopefully annual, I hope it's
Mhm.
annual, summit that happened at Harvard University. I guess it was 4 or 5 weeks ago now. This
Mhm.
time of year, as we're racing to the end of the year, everything goes by very, very quickly. But you sat on a panel at that. And that's when I first became aware of you and what you were doing in Être. And I was like, I have to have this woman on our podcast because wow, like what Être does is like exactly the types of things that we love to highlight on this show. You and I were just talking off mic for a minute about mentoring in general, I guess, both,
Mhm.
more at the collegiate level, but I know you guys expand well beyond just college aged women. So but maybe we'll just start by just level setting. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Esra?
Yes, and I'm actually loving that you're using the French pronunciation. I often don't, but it's making me really happy. So thank you for having me. This is
Yeah.
great. Yes, so être in French means to be,
Mhm.
and I really loved when I started first thinking about launching this. I loved the idea of just asking girls that question on
What
a
do you want
very
to be?
fundamental level. What do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be,
Mm.
rather? The
Yes.
distinction being, I'm not asking them what they want to be in terms of
Mm.
careers.
Mm.
Plenty of time for that and so much blue sky there. But
Yeah.
who do you want to be? What type of girls do you want to be?
Mm.
And so at its core, Etra brings girls as early as middle school directly into companies that they ask to see to meet female leaders face to face.
Mm.
And that's really the core of it, is the idea that mentorship can start early. And we've done research on it, which we can talk about really
Yes.
to do the math and prove that mentors matter early. But it's one thing to say, well, this person is a role model or it's aspirational. Putting girls face to face at an early age with someone who looks them in the eye and says, I remember being
Yeah.
your age. I
Oh,
remember being in seventh grade or a junior in high school or a freshman in college. I have stood in those high tops and I know your concerns. I'm ready to share my energy and my network and my feedback with you. Come meet my team
yeah.
at Google or TikTok or the stock exchange or wherever she happens to be. And let's see what you think. That's the type of mentorship we're involved with.
I read some of the statistics on your website around, 13 to 17-year-old girls and all of the cavalcade of things that we all go through at that age, women especially. You
Mhm.
and I talked about this for a second ago. I have a daughter who's 21. She's a senior in college. I remember those days of 13, 14, 15, 16. These are volatile days, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot to happening there. But you didn't start here, certainly,
No.
right? One of the things I learned about you in when I saw you speak on the panel at Girls into VC is that this is I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is the advancement of your career. This is the chapter two, maybe. I don't know. Talk a
It
little bit
is,
about
and
that.
such an unexpected one too.
Yeah.
So you're right. So I was a lawyer for many years at Skadden Arps, which is a huge global firm. I did mergers and acquisitions. I did something called knowledge strategy, where we were really trying to build internal deal banks within our practice and then with other practices. I was as nerdy as it gets. And I knew I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I was tiny. But you talk about early mentorship. My grandmother was a lawyer at a time when women were not. She graduated law school in 1936.
Yeah, certainly. Wow.
And
Wow.
right, so she was a really early mentor for me, but it never occurred to me I would ever do anything other than practice law. I was so
Right.
happy. I went straight from college to law school. I went straight from law school to the firm. I was with that same law firm twice,
Hmm.
once early in my career. I stepped out for about 6 years when my kids were small. I went back for another 10 years. I loved it.
Yeah.
So it's completely unexpected that I would have pivoted to something that started as a passion project and now is a full-time endeavor that I adore.
Wow. It's I love those types of stories. And that actually was one of the things that was drawn that drew me to you when I saw you speak was this is that true like sort of like I evolved to this in my career. Never thought it would be from a passion project to the thing I focus on all the time, right?
All the
So
time.
yeah, I bet it's like 24/7. It's so outstanding. So how do people not like compartmentalize this into the same category as like bring your daughter to work day and those other types of programs? Talk to me a little bit about the differentiation there of what you're doing with ETSPA compared to like some of these other
Mhm.
maybe not well-intended programs, but certainly, maybe much different.
Well, I love that you brought that up because Bring Our Daughters to Work Day started in 1993,
Mm,
which was the year that I began practicing law.
mm,
So during my professional career, I had never known a time where there wasn't Bring Our Daughters
mm.
to Work Day. That was started by Gloria Steinem
Yeah.
and Nell Merlino and Kristen Golden. And they just wanted a one-day endeavor. They thought it was going to be really small. And I've talked to all of them about this day because it
Mm,
was really impactful for me to see it.
sure.
And they were stunned. They talk about going to Grand Central Station at the end of that day and watching all of the parents, many, many men with their daughters heading to the train at the end of the day. And they just said, this is exactly what we pictured. I started this when my daughter was in middle school and I was still working.
Okay.
And I began taking her to see my friends at work. She wasn't as interested in my job, but my friends had much cooler jobs. And so being able to bring her to see at an early age, what's it like to be an orthopedic surgeon or
Yeah.
work in fashion or run a magazine? So I took her very early and saw the impact that had on her. Then when I really started thinking about launching something of my own, part of it was that idea of Bring Our Daughters to Work Day. But why can't I bring other people's daughters?
Sure.
I brought my daughter to see other people. Why can't I just do this for more girls who
Sure.
might not have the opportunity to go with a parent?
Mm,
And why does it have to be once a year?
right.
We actually had the honor, the privilege of sitting down with Gloria Steinem in May with a bunch
Unbelievable.
of Etra girls to have this sort of intergenerational conversation. But we talked about Bring Our Daughters to Work Day and the idea that she and these other amazing women had at the time, and the fact that it can evolve and companies will still throw their doors open at any other day of the year as well
Yeah.
to welcome girls into the boardroom.
It's amazing. I had a personal instance of my daughter maybe 2 years ago. It was pre-COVID, so maybe 3 years ago, coming to visit me at work just for a minute, just because she needed to drop in and get something. And she brought one of her friends with her who had never stepped foot in a professional office before.
Right.
And her parents were not office workers, and that was not what, and she was like looking around, and I'm thinking to myself, to your point, like what a missed opportunity for someone at that point who was like maybe 18 or 19 years old, had never stepped foot inside a professional office before,
Right.
even just to see what it was about. Maybe that's not for her, but the more important thing is you learn that that isn't for me, right? Like you
Right.
said, it's
But
not
it's out there.
what do you want to be, it's who do you want to be, but it's out there,
And,
right? Yeah.
and it's out there.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, right, going to who do you want to be? On our website are all these different pages. Be smart, be strong,
Mhm.
be brave. And each one connects to a particular vertical. So let's say that there's a girl who's 11 or 12 and she loves science and she loves STEM and her school has a certain amount of resources,
Sure.
but not everything else. And if she goes to the Be Smart page, she might see a link to the 3M Young Scientist Challenge, which is a tremendous national challenge open to middle schoolers. And the kids that come out of this are incredible and they get aligned with a 3M mentor and girls like Gitanjali Rayo, who won when she was, I don't know, I think 11,
Sure.
for something that can detect lead in water, the way you can detect chlorine levels in a pool. She went on to be Time's first ever Kid of the Year.
Right.
The opportunities there are great, but maybe not every girl knows about that. Free links to all of these things. On the Be Strong page, you want advice from a professional athlete. Maybe you want to connect with an Olympic athlete or
Sure.
a collegiate recruit. How do you do it?
Right.
Let's democratize access to mentors at this early age. And we just break it down into those who do you want to be pages, which makes it easy for the girl, easy for the
Mm.
parent, and tremendous for any mentor who wants to jump
It
in.
is amazing. It is amazing. So I have a two-part question to follow on to that, Illana. So you talked about the democratization. So kind of the notion of like a thumbnail sketch of the different type of programs that you do offer these young women. And then how do you select mentors? How do they become part of it? I have to assume that you're probably at a point now where people are approaching you as much as you're approaching them, but I don't want to
No,
overassume that.
we are, and
Yeah.
happily so.
Yeah.
It's all driven off of the girls.
Mm.
I'm not reaching out to a company or to a woman where I don't have a girl asking to do that.
Understood. Okay.
It's incredibly girl driven. The way our sort of structure works, and again, it is constantly evolving because the girls come up with new things they want to do.
Mm.
Our basic offering is that if you are in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, the opportunities are live. And so the girls can vote. We want to go see TikTok. We want to go visit NBC.
Yeah.
They pick a company. I reach out to that company and say, can I bring 15 to 20 girls? It's always on a weekday because we need to see
Sure.
what's
Going
during
on. The action. Yeah. Yeah.
the action. We're in and out inside of 2 hours. We're not upsetting an entire company's day, and the girls go back to school.
Right.
We've not had one company say no. We've not had one school say no. So the girls will ask to go, and we schedule that. Those can be as often as sometimes once a month. There are obviously big cultural days that we
Yeah.
love. Day of the Girl, International Women's Day, Equal
Sure.
Pay Day, all of
All
those
those things. And you can
become
tie
very
those, make that
special.
association. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we rang the bell at NASDAQ for National Mentoring Month. I mean, that kind of stuff. But when the girls ask, we make a list, and I'm polling them every month.
Mm.
So there's a monthly email that goes out to all of our girls who are on this huge board. I have a board of advisors that is entirely middle and high school age girls.
I love this.
Constant feedback.
Sure.
So if I see that 3/4 of the girls really want to go to the UN, we're going to make that happen. So that's the live portion.
Mhm.
And then there are after school clubs. And so again, if those are in an area where I can connect you directly to women, those women can come into the school and speak.
Sure.
Girls can go there, or it can be virtual. During COVID was really where that took off for us,
Sure.
because suddenly you can't go into the companies. Girls are stuck at home. So we started doing what we called mentor pop-ups.
Mm.
And so those can be done through your after school club, if you've got a Club Être chapter, or honestly, if they're just a group of girls sitting in their living room and they say, gosh, we would love to talk to an astronaut, and they reach out to me, we can figure that out.
Right.
And so we can Zoom with someone who works at the space station or at Redwire Space or any of these places. So that can be fairly informal, either through a school or simply a group of really interested
Sure.
girls. We have a TED Ed club, which started again during COVID. Suddenly all of these girls lost their spring season on their sport. They lost their winter musical. There's no yearbook. How are they? You talk about girls applying to college. How am I going to distinguish myself?
Sure.
You must have a passion. You must have something you want to lean into. We got licensed as a TED Ed club. And so this is our 3rd season. We just had our 3rd season of girls doing TED Ed talks in 4 countries, which was amazing.
It is amazing.
But that's another way that girls can be involved. If they don't want to start a club at their school, they need this to be personal.
Mhm.
They pick a topic. We start in April, we film in October. And during that time, they get set up with a mentor or several who can give expertise to back the topic.
Sure.
If you've got a 10-year-old girl, we had our youngest TED speaker this year was 10.
Wow.
From Canada, and she wanted to talk about pollution. So we asked her who her ideal mentor would be. She said Jane Goodall, which I love. I said, I don't know if we're going to get Jane Goodall, but 4
yeah.
women from the Jane Goodall Institute, 2 in the US and 2 in Canada, reached back out and said, we would love to help. And they advised her through the course of her research and writing, which was great.
That's wonderful.
So those are a bunch of different ways
Sure.
that girls can get involved. Having said that, there are tons more. We've done 2 books where girls
Right.
have offered.
I wanted to ask you about your book, so thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
So the second
Yeah.
book is really the model I think that future books will go on. Again, coming out of COVID, girls still had questions
Right.
about jobs, but we couldn't go into companies anymore and get them answered. So I just said, send them to me.
Mhm.
How do I get my art scene at Pixar? How do you get an internship at SpaceX? Do you need a cover letter to apply to Morgan Stanley? You know, any of these questions.
Sure.
And let's find women at those companies to answer. That became the Epic Mentor Guide. And girls are still sending questions. So we've got this Q&A bank that we will do something with next, whether it's a book, whether it's something, you know, more digital.
Sure.
Entirely. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but there is always this question and answer dynamic with mentors. And the more that girls send and the more ideas girls have, those are the ideas I want to bring to the forefront.
That's amazing. You know, it's funny. My daughter asked me yesterday, or not yesterday, a couple of days ago, like, how do you get an internship at a Big Four? Like that was
Right.
her question, you know? And because like it's so daunting to try to go through
It
that
is.
entire process, right? And you know, because like I said, she's a senior in college, she's thinking about these things,
Mhm.
and she's like, how do I get an internship at a Big Four? Or what would that even entail? Or what would that mean? Or what, you know, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know, right? You know, like,
So first of all, I mean, so let's take that question, because that's not an uncommon question.
Yeah.
Companies like that have a very formal internship process, right?
Sure.
They open it, they close it. So you follow along that path, and that's fairly regimented, but there are more things you can do. She can take a look at the alumni database for her college
Yeah,
and
right.
work
And see,
backwards
yeah,
and see who has ever worked there.
right.
LinkedIn is one of my absolute favorite tools.
Sure.
And I so wish that they had some platform for younger kids. What
Yes,
I really want, and I want 5 minutes in the room with whoever the person is at LinkedIn, the idea that you could have a listening own channel for the younger set,
I
and they
agree.
can find role models and listen, and then onboard
I
when
agree.
there's and can have a page. But for your daughter who's 21, she can go on LinkedIn, sift through everyone who works at whichever big four firm she's talking about to
Right,
say, who went to my college, perhaps who went to my high school, who was in my sorority if she's in one,
right.
where do we have common interests or contacts that overlap? And she can at least glean more information.
Sure,
Hi,
sure.
I'm so-and-so. I've applied for an internship, but I'd love to spend 5 minutes or send you one question by email. This is my question about your program.
Right.
Why not?
The way that you break it down, right, it's so elegant. And I think that
Thank you.
that's the really meaningful part of this, because it is so overwhelming,
Yeah,
right? To try to attack some of these things, and you don't the I find sometimes the technology is like it's your best friend or it's your worst enemy, because it can be your best friend to open doors, but it is so overwhelming to try to find that starting point, right?
yeah.
And like you said, break it down, work backwards from here, work backwards from there. It's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about impact. And
Mhm.
some of this is kind of, I think, serendipitous in the timing, because I just read the piece you guys dropped this morning, where you're kind of like looking back at the quarter and looking back at the year, and you had some really cool sort of statistics that were associated with that. But just at a high level, when you folks think about impact and where what so what are some of the definitions of success for you? What do those look like, Illana?
It's a great question, and it changes depending on which lens you're looking through.
Mm,
If I'm talking with my girls, I know what their metrics are. They're
mhm,
looking at how many followers do we have,
right.
and we're probably just over 20,000 across all of our platforms.
Mhm,
They're looking at the engagement on different posts, and they're looking at the scaling level of companies where we have access. That's
mhm,
where they see success.
mm.
We can ask to go almost anywhere, and they'll ask, and they can see, we can ask to talk to anyone. That's how the girls are measuring it.
Sure.
How many clubs, how many followers, that kind of thing. We've got thousands of girls at this point. We've got girls moving to different countries and starting clubs. For me, the impact is the longevity of some of the mentorships.
Sure.
I'm seeing now, again, we're only seventh, but I'm just seeing now girls who might have been in 8th grade when they first went to Goldman Sachs, and now they're in college and they're reaching back out and saying, do you think that woman I met would look at my LinkedIn profile?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I can connect them. And because we're taking small groups in, we're not taking more than 25 ever,
Okay.
the women remember. And she'll say, of course, I
Mm.
love that.
I
Or I'm
remember
not at
you.
Goldman
Yeah,
any,
absolutely. Yeah.
or I'm not at Goldman anymore, but here's a colleague who is, and let me connect them.
Sure.
Those relationships are how I'm measuring success.
Mm.
Our reach, obviously, I want a club on every continent. I want as many clubs in schools, particularly in underserved areas in the country, as I can possibly have.
Right.
When I see that it's more than a mentor moment, and those are valuable. That 15-minute interaction is valuable and has impact on girls for a long time.
Sure.
But when I see a mentorship that actually continues and
Yeah.
grows with the girl, that is the impact that I've never really counted on. I wasn't sure that anything would last past that boardroom visit. And when I see it happening, it blows my mind. It does.
I love that, especially when you talk about there could be years that have
Yeah,
passed between you sort of point A in the life of the girl and now point B, and having the opportunity to reach back and seeing, to your point, because of the smallness, right? Um, how that continues to be like, oh yeah, I will totally re-engage with you, even though it's been 6 years or five
right.
years or something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So as you scale that, how do you scale that? And I guess, that to me is really interesting. And how do you envision scaling the impact? Because of it, I mean, and maybe you'll stay at 25 as your cohort or what have you. And you mentioned a club on every continent, which I love that. I love that notion. Even Antarctica, right? We're even going to get Antarctica.
Just one,
Just
just
what?
one.
What are your thoughts on how to scale that, Alana? I'm very curious.
We're at an inflection point now where it really is what I think about quite often. For the live visits, I think schools are the way to do it.
Sure.
We offer something that is hard for a lot of schools to do on their own, and we're making it incredibly easy,
Mm,
a light lift. if the girls vote on what they want to focus on, we can relate to that. I've got a school in Jersey that only ever wants to meet with women in finance. That's all we do. There's a club in South Korea that only wants to talk to women in medicine.
Interesting.
But, if a school can't devote time and resources and faculty members and things like that to that all the time, we can help with that.
Sure.
So schools are a great way for either the Zoom or the live meetings with mentors. Beyond that, to me, when you talk about really democratizing access, when I look at AI, when I look at things like the metaverse, that to me is a really exciting, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but that why not question, which is always in the back of my mind with everything
Yeah,
we do.
why not this? Yeah.
Why can't the girl who is in India and loves soccer and, is young, get on some kind of virtual soccer field with an Olympic player and ask her questions in real time,
Sure.
and behind the safety of an avatar or something
Of
like
course.
that, and gradually move into something where they can meet in person or
Sure.
get more.
The technology allows that for sure. Yeah.
It does. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that I'm really interested in either building or talking with people who are building, because that seems to me the logical next step. We went from boardrooms to virtual to global to why not? Why not
Sure.
this?
Sure. Well, and some of that virtualness was out of necessity, right? But it certainly allows you to scale at a level because you can't be everywhere all at once, even as
No,
much.
and neither can the women.
Sure.
But if you can say these people are in your time zone, or we're going to make this work, or get a group of girls together in a classroom and we're going to bring in, an astronaut or whatever it is, a neurosurgeon, an artist, someone on Broadway.
Sure.
These are the things that I just see, it's endless. And the women are really into it.
Sure. Yeah.
You're not asking a woman to be someone's mentor for 5 years. If that happens, God bless. But we're asking them for 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
And, nobody says no.
Nobody says no. And why would they? Right. I mean, it's amazing. One of the things we heard at the summit that you and I were at a couple of weeks ago was the idea of don't be afraid, right? Send that cold email, send that cold LinkedIn DM. In fact, that's how I reached out to you. Like, we didn't actually have an opportunity to chat in person at that event because of how busy everyone was. But part of that is daunting, right? And intimidating, and maybe, the confidence isn't there as part of that. I would just love, I would love to hear your thoughts about that. Not necessarily as it pertains to some of the work you're doing here at ETRA, but just in general, like, how do you think about, helping younger women, girls really kind of get through that I just don't have the confidence to call that person or email that person?
It's a great question. And I don't think it's anything that we outgrow soon.
Sure.
First thing I would say is don't be embarrassed by the fear. Think about your fear or your nervousness like respect. You have respect for this person. You have respect for the job they do. A little trepidation is okay.
Yeah.
That's appropriate. So never be embarrassed by that. I think I'm a huge believer in the cold email, the cold DM. I just think these technologies are there for us to use, but I would use them wisely and again, with the same amount of manners and respect. Right. So you're not emailing someone to say instantly, could we have coffee?
Right.
Or can you be my mentor forever?
Right. Or can I have a job? Or what?
Yeah, these are not emails that are going to get returned.
Right.
To me, the shorter the email, the better. Let's remember, everyone's reading everything first on their phone. So the shorter, the better. The subject line for me is everything.
Yes.
Tell me what you are looking for in that subject line, just straight out. Looking to ask 2 questions by email about your role in this. Saw your TED Talk and wanted to ask 1 follow-up question.
Sure.
Like, give me some context about what this is. And then, I would close everything by saying, if you're not the right person for this, do you have someone?
Is there someone else? Sure.
Who would be? Give someone an easy way out. Maybe they're on maternity leave. Maybe they are to here with a project, but they don't want to say no to everything.
Right.
But the person who works down the hall might be ideal.
Sure.
And so give them that option.
Sure.
And then if you hear nothing, it's not inappropriate to circle back in a reasonable amount of time.
Sure.
Give it 3 months, just circling back, wondering if this landed on your, again.
Yeah, everyone's busy. You
I
understand. Sure. Yep.
And if they say no, again, no could mean not now.
Right.
Wait a decent amount of time. You can always circle back with some other update or something like that. The other thing is, I don't think it's only email or LinkedIn. Sometimes we can meet people wherever they are.
Sure. Socially.
Instagram.
Yep.
We have met so many mentors on Insta, just DMing them. They
Sure.
might be reading more of their own stuff there than they're reading their own emails. And what we saw in our research too is that social media is where a lot of girls are reaching out to
Right.
make connection and find mentors. Nearly 3 in 4 girls that we surveyed said that they would actually DM someone to, create a mentor relationship or ask a role model question or something like that. So if you see the person with whom you'd like to connect is most active on X or Insta or anywhere else, meet them there.
Right.
Okay.
It's funny.
Uh,
I laugh sometimes in my own world how many times I'm talking to the same person over 3 different mediums,
yeah,
right? Because you're like, it's all where you are in that moment.
right.
Not to shamelessly plug the name of the show, but that's kind of it's like
Yeah.
I'm DMing with you in Instagram because that's where we both are. But then
Mhm.
maybe that conversation moves to text, or maybe that conversation moves to LinkedIn. But it's the notion of like it's where I am at that moment, and that's
Yep.
you said like I'll look at my email, but I'm going to look here or look there or what have you.
So to that
Yeah.
point, for the younger set that's listening to this, if that happens and you decide to stay with email or you decide to stay on LinkedIn, remind us on those other platforms that we have moved the conversation there, because then
Yes.
it's really easy to scroll and think, did I not respond to this?
Right.
So something circling back saying, so happy this conversation moved to email is super helpful.
That's awesome. And this might be a little harder for some of the younger set in your group, but I know this came up at the conference you and I were at together, and it's also a credo that I live by too, which is try to give something in return. So a
Yeah.
lot of times when I reach out to someone, I may say, "Hey, I saw this. I thought it might be of interest to you." So you're kind of giving something in return as a way to kind of interact and show your
Mhm.
gravitas and all of that, right?
I think that's great. I
Yeah.
do. I think it's true. And I remember that being talked about that day,
Mm.
is to bring something of value.
To the
And
table. Sure.
it can simply be a follow-up to something else. I read this white paper that you did, and it reminded me of this,
Right.
thought you
I
would
saw
enjoy
this
it. It
interview
doesn't
you
have to
were
be your work.
right.
It can be perhaps a colleague of theirs or someone, something that you think they would enjoy. And
Right.
I do think that's really great. The other thing to do is to simply talk about why it moved you. Like,
Hmm.
not the empty compliments so much, but this mattered to me because I wrote my college thesis about something like this, and
Sure.
it, remind them of what that is. But I agree, and I think
Yeah.
I love that you live by that credo, because I
Yes,
think, not taking more than you give is just a great basic.
absolutely. I see so much like vibrance in the way you speak, and it's all over your face how important this is to you. But I have to think that there's probably hard days too, right? So what do you do when the hard days come and it's a little bit more challenging for you maybe, or is there so much inspiration that you're gathering from these young women that there's never a hard day? But I am curious because we all face the tough times too, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think most of the days there's so much awe when I look at these girls.
Mm,
They are coming from such a myriad of backgrounds. They are often working multiple jobs.
right.
During COVID, so many of them became the primary caretaker in
Right.
their house if parents had to be elsewhere or were first line workers or things like that. And these girls carried the water with so much grace and
Yeah,
self-assurance
humility.
that
Yeah,
I am
yeah, yeah.
in awe, and you want to move mountains for them. You
Mm,
want to bring every mentor that they want to their doorstep. You want to clear that brush in every possible way for them. And of course, you can't
right,
do it for everyone. And so it's hard sometimes to say, I can do this.
right.
We'd love to be able to do this, but right now we're going to be here, and then we'll move it forward slowly. I want
Mm,
to amplify every nonprofit these girls have started, every book that they're writing, every, you know, product they're bringing to market, and they are. And you have to remind yourself that you need to put the right pieces on the board for them.
sure.
But there are limits to what we can all do. That's really hard, and you have to kind of let the awe take over and not let the frustration of, you are remarkably talented and I just want to put you here right
And
now.
I can't.
I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
if I find the right mentor, if I find the right woman and I put them face to face, she can do it.
right.
But it's hard not to want to flip to the end of the book and do it faster.
Right. Yeah, I would think there's always that notion of like want to get there faster, or want to, don't want that person to have to wait 3 months, want that
Right.
person to be able to have something in a week or two or what have you. But
They are
these
often much more patient than I am. But
well, that's good, I guess, right?
Mhm.
As you're kind of advocating on their behalf in a lot of ways, right? So you're carrying that urgency for them. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Um, you probably get asked this a lot, but what's the 5-year outlook for Etra? Where, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, and you're kind of like, I want a presence on every continent and those kinds of things. But there's, you gotta, just like any other segmentation exercise, you got to break it down. Kind of, what does that road look like for you folks?
One piece of that, I think, is having more of a relationship for the girls with the companies that we visit.
Hmm,
The girls are picking the companies because they either love the
the
product,
product. Yeah,
they use the platform all the time. They have some brand affinity already, which is why they're picking it.
sure.
To me, there's an opportunity for girls to really play a larger role.
Hmm,
They can be focus groups. I would love to see them inspire little capsule collections for different things. I think they have a lot to say.
sure,
And they're interested not just in what's on the shelf, they're interested in who's in the offices, who's in the conference room. The tour of the place is one of
sure.
their things. I can see down the road some interface, I don't know, with girls and companies that they're picking for ideas.
Yeah,
Little incubator labs, little inspiration
yeah.
labs. I can see that. I like that idea a lot. I think that there will probably be more books, the Epic Mentor series. I can see the Epic Mentor Guide to Space, the Epic Mentor Guide to Broadway, the
Sure.
Epic
Why couldn't it
Guide
be
to
very
music.
specific to, yeah, yeah.
Right, maybe not 180 women in each one, maybe 50, but I can see that down the road. We're coming out with new research this year. We're updating our confidence survey, and I'm really excited about that
Ooh,
because the metrics are so fascinating, the questions that we're asking and the things that girls are facing these days.
sure.
Looking at the CDC stats that came out earlier this year, which were so disheartening about the mental wellness of girls and things like that, if we can provide not a fix, but some kind of antidote or alternative to that through mentorship, bolstering confidence, empowering girls in a different way,
Right.
giving new things to lean on. I think it's important and doable.
Certainly. And especially what you just said too about some of the very alarming statistics, right?
Yeah.
And when I'm sure people come to you and ask you why at a simple level, like, why do you do this? Right? You think of like, well, if I could just help one person or
Mhm.
just one, right? It really kind of makes it all worthwhile. It's amazing.
It's those
Yeah.
moments in the
Right.
boardroom. I knew the first company we ever visited was Spotify.
Mm.
And girls had asked to visit Spotify. I took, I think, 10 or 12 girls in. And the minute they were in that boardroom and they're all spinning around in their chairs and every hand is thrown up with a question, and they were good questions.
Yeah.
They were not, what's your favorite song? They
Right.
were asking these executives, what's more important for your job, determination or passion?
Wow.
Is this your dream job? Right. Profound questions. I just knew in that instant, this is the heart of what we're
This
supposed to
is
do.
it. Yeah, this is right. Yeah, you're like, this is where we're supposed to be, right here.
Putting
Yeah.
these girls in
Yeah.
the room, if we really, really want diversity in the boardroom, show it to them
Show it to
early.
them. Yeah.
Save seats for girls. That I think was the most sort of springboard moment for us, and that stays with me all the time.
I can't imagine how that first, because that was, it played out in the way that it did, right? I have
Yeah,
to imagine that that is just something you carry with you and certainly serves as continued inspiration. That's
yeah, it's true.
outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get asked this question a lot, but I'll maybe use it as we kind of close our time together. Um, the young girl that comes up to you, and say, what's that one piece of advice you would share with me? Is there one piece of advice that you share? Have
There
you been
is,
able to, yeah, have you been able to boil it down to one thing?
there is, and I can feel my girls rolling their eyes right now as I say it because they have heard it so,
So
so
many
often.
times.
So I am apologizing to them, but I mean it every time I say it, which is raise your hand.
Ah,
Raise your hand and do not lower your standards. And
mm,
those two things go together. If you are in a classroom or a boardroom or anywhere, a locker room, and you've got a question, you have something to say, raise your hand. Do not wait for someone else to ask it. Don't let anyone speak over you, but don't
sure.
wait for someone else to get there. You got there faster. Raise your hand and say it. To the
Mm-hmm.
same point, raise your hand to join in or help in an area that
Yes.
aligns with you. Raise your hand to speak out against something
Mm-hmm.
that you disavow.
Mm-hmm.
Raise your hand to help that next person.
Sure.
Raise your hand and do not ever lower your standards.
Yeah, that I love that because when you first started saying raise your hand, I'm thinking of, oh, raise your hand for what you can do for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask and
Yes,
advocate for
that too.
yourself.
That's right.
But you immediately took it to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, which was raise your hand when you see an injustice, raise your hand when you see an area where you can help, raise your hand when you're
Mhm.
curious. I love that. That's just it's so all encompassing, and that's amazing. Yes.
No, I'm glad. It's
Yeah.
it is something that I see, and when we see it in the boardroom, we know we're right.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. I know how busy you are with everything that you're trying to do with Etra, so we really appreciate it. Loved hearing the story. Can't wait to continue to see the impact that you guys are going to just put on the lives of these young ladies. So thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Good. We'll talk again soon.
I would love that. Thanks.
Thank you.